Good morning, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well so far in this beautiful morning, Thursday morning at that. Welcome, good morning. My name is Jose Borrell.
And I'm Nancy Martinez.
And we want to welcome you to Catalyst, a monthly meeting that gathers Stanislaus County residents, leaders, and influencers. Thank you all that could make it in this morning and those who have joined us on Zoom, as well as Facebook Live. If you're joining on through Zoom, you will have a chance to interact with your online host, Mr. John Torres.
As everybody's taking a seat, just a few things before we get started. We want to give a shout out to Desiree for serving us with some delicious coffee, Starbucks. Best coffee ever, thank you. And for those on Zoom, not sure where the camera is, you're missing out. And then if you're here in the room, please make sure to sign in on the sheet on your table. And if you're online, please remember to keep your mic on mute, and feel free to use the chat for any questions or comments as we move forward. And for all of those who are here today, please check in on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Go to the City Ministry Network's Facebook page, drop a like, and a follow.
With that, Catalyst is a place for community conversations, connections that matter and inspire. It is a safe place to explore the issues that we face in our community. We're all diverse people with different perspectives that choose to work together for the benefit of our community. Our hope is that you will connect, build trust, and work together to have a collective impact. So why are we here? Stanislaus 2030 is a collaboration among businesses, government, civic stakeholders to create and deliver a joint strategy and investment plan for regional growth and opportunity in the coming decade and beyond. It aims to create pathways for Stanislaus residents to achieve economic mobility by building an economy that is diverse, inclusive, connected, vibrant, and sustainable. Through Stanislaus 2030, the region envisions and commits to building a high-performing, diverse economy that is multicultural and dreams for the future.
And if you'd like to know a little bit more about Stanislaus 2030, there's also information sheets at your table that you can take a look at. Before we get started, a little bit about Jose and I. We're part of Debrief along with Emmanuel Escamilla, who's in the crowd. We are a community-focused data company out of Modesto, California. Our purpose and our mission is to amplify the voices of underserved communities everywhere. As a team, we recognize that there was a need to help vulnerable communities in our county stay informed and share their wisdom on resource allocation, planning, and economic development. Our company actually was birthed out of City Ministry Network's Latino leadership. Woo, thank you. Our work with Stanislaus Community Foundation and Stanislaus 2030 is a demonstration of the value that young people in the community have and the continued need to have segments of our county involved in the political and social processes that bring progress to our lives. Thank you to City Ministry Networks, and thank you to Stanislaus Community Foundation.
Woo! Let's give a round of applause. Stanislaus 2030 and CMN. First, I want to welcome Yamilet Valladolid. Ms. Valladolid works for Golden Valley Health Centers, a nonprofit organization that offers care to families in need in Stanislaus, San Joaquin counties, and Merced as well. Regardless of language, cultural, and financial barriers, currently she is the Director of Government and Community Affairs, where she builds relationships with the community and elected officials by creating bridges for collaboration. She currently serves as a co-chair for the Economic Development Project Stanislaus 2030. She has a passion to pave the way for others to follow their educational and leadership goals. Can we all please welcome Yamilet to the Catalyst stage? Woo.
Thank you, Jose, and thank you, Yami. Our second presenter this morning is Marianne Cannon. As President and Chief Executive Officer, Ms. Cannon sets the vision for Stanislaus Community Foundation's leadership work in the community. This includes working with their board of directors and leading their staff to develop impactful change around education, economic opportunity, and civic literacy. The foundation is doing an amazing job working in tandem with its partners, donors, and stakeholders to guide their philanthropic investments that connect resources with local needs. Please welcome Marianne Cannon to the Catalyst stage.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. So good to be here. We're really looking forward to sharing some really good information with you today. And so we're going to go ahead and start with the presentation. So as you know, we're here to talk about Stanislaus 2030, but you probably want to wonder, what is Stanislaus 2030? Well, Stanislaus 2030 is a collaboration among businesses, government, and civic stakeholders. And we want to create and deliver a joint strategy and investment plan by summer of 2022. So we're on a crunch now. For regional economic growth and opportunity in the coming decade. The vision is we envision and commit to build a high-performing, diverse economy to match our multicultural lifestyles and dreams for the future. Now, our mission, we will create pathways for Stanislaus residents to achieve economic mobility by building an economy that is diverse, inclusive, connected, vibrant, and sustainable. So we're going to go to the next slide so we can talk about what are the desired outcomes. The population scale investment agenda is going to be based on understanding the larger market forces and future trends, the current and future state of the Stanislaus economy, the knowledge of demographic shifts, and really truly have authentic community input. The business plans for each priority investment area, business plans with investable strategies and tactics owned by local stakeholders, funding and policy that aligns with the business plans that are executed and performance reported regularly to partners and the public. Our next slide will tell us why it is important to create an investment agenda. Clarity. Articulate a future vision and consensus on priority projects that will transform our economy. Opportunity. Maximize public, private, and philanthropic investments to fund our highest priority plans. Engagement and consensus, that's what our Debrief team is going to be doing, seeking community input and building resident engagement throughout this whole process. Competition. Other states and regions use joint planning rooted in data and market analysis as a competitive strength. We need to improve our odds by collaborating and take an ecosystem approach to build a shock-proof economy. And we need to address those gaps in the economic infrastructure that reverse history of disinvestment. Now, this is going to be the process, and as you can see, there's a timeline. In August through October, we were organizing and building momentum. Building the infrastructure, designing the phase, building the website, the social media, securing public and private funds, and presenting to all city councils. During August through February was a discovery. There was a lot of great information, great data. We need to ensure that we know that to know which direction we want to take, right? The community engagement piece, convening local research groups. Right now, February through April, we're at the strategy development phase. So that's where we are. We're development of key strategies based on data and with consensus of leaders. Work groups to develop business plans co-designed with residents of Stanislaus County. Operational commitment to business plans from key stakeholders. May through July, we want to execute and report. So we're going to be hearing a lot of this through May through July. The buying and ownership of investment agenda, the refinement and delivery of business plans within the agenda, and we're going to identify and align policy and funding to support the priority business plans. Set up accountability and governance structure for future reports. Our next slide actually talks about who are our partners to date. Public, private, and support. As you can see, we're definitely garnering a lot of partnerships throughout the community. Our next slide talks about Debrief, the community engagement phase. And you already got to meet them a couple minutes ago. But really, they have a really huge take on with focus groups and interviews, meeting with minority business owners and trade schools to get experiential feedback on their experience in the local economy. Forums and community meetings, really getting thoughtful feedback through this methodology so they can build on those data points and build our narrative. The community survey as well. Input and feedback from residents on findings on the Brookings report, which we'll hear more about, and insight on their experiences working in the local economy. Our next slide is going to tell you, well, who are these people? Who's doing this? So we have several different phases as far as like the Leadership Council. It's 100 leaders representing the community and areas of expertise. Okay. The Executive Committee, there's 30 key private, public, and civic leaders. They're representing geographic, demographic, and sectors in our community as far as
middle wage jobs, those good jobs as we mentioned. And we define those good jobs, if you could go to the next slide, as jobs that pay a living wage of $27 to $28 an hour, offer benefits, and also offer future growth opportunities. So why $27 or $28 an hour? We did a market assessment. So we have Brookings on hand, and they're our data analysis partners. And they did a market assessment. What does it cost for just one adult with one child to make ends meet and even have a little bit of savings left over every month to put into the next month? What would it take for them financially to do that? And that wage threshold was $27 to $28 an hour. When you factor in the cost of childcare and housing, transportation, and other amenities, those aren't even, those are life things that you need, essentials. But when you take in what's called a market basket of what it costs to live in Stanislaus County, and it's a wealth building because, and by wealth building, we're talking just enough to save for the next month, it is that range, that wage threshold. And then we looked at what are the existing industries and jobs that pay that wage. And we are, as you can see, 40, if you could keep clicking, because it'll show you, oh, it's missing some graphics. We're missing 40,000 jobs in that category of paying the $28 an hour at minimum, of offering benefits and offering pathways. So you can see here what we define as good jobs. Now that doesn't mean that tomorrow we're going to create 40,000 jobs. I don't even know that in the next decade we'll create 40,000 jobs. But this should be our North Star. This should be what we are aiming for, okay? Because it really, at the end of the day, let me just be honest for a moment. Stanislaus 2030, you guys, is just an organizing function. It is an organizing function to get us all on the same page, talking the same language, understanding the difference between locally serving economies, which are healthcare and community foundations, and selling coffee and t-shirts and hats to people, and hospitality, healthcare. Those are all locally serving. Those will be in place. What we're missing is the traded sector, the jobs that are industry jobs that create a commodity of value outside this community, but we bring whatever we sell that commodity for, we bring that money back into this community and circulate it to the locally serving jobs. That's just what we're beginning to understand, just what an economy is. We're missing those traded sector jobs by and large. A lot of the jobs we currently have in our economy that are traded sector jobs are at risk for automation. And so we're going to offset even more people within those jobs. And so how do we create more traded sector jobs? If you could move to the next slide. How do we create more traded industries adjacent to or supportive of ag, which is our main traded sector? How do we do what already is working in this community but build around ag in a way that's moving us forward? How do we create, and those jobs, are they good jobs that pay a living wage, that pay benefits? And then how do we train people to get in those jobs? What is the pipeline to get people into jobs of the future? And how do we as a community identify those industries, begin to build and attract those industries, develop training pipelines for those industries? So that's one focus of Stanislaus 2030. The other main focus is how do we build small business, entrepreneurship, as I mentioned, we're also woefully lacking there. How do we create more opportunities for small business to thrive in our community? And then finally, how do we address the barriers that exist to access jobs, to access training, and to be able to start a small business if that's what your goal is. And oftentimes those barriers are childcare, transportation, access to funding and capital. And so how do we begin to remove those barriers so that any of us that want to do any of those things are able to do so readily and have a very clear pathway? That's it. That sounds easy. It's not. And it is our collective job, whether we're in education, we're in government, we're in any other space, to be able to move along those goals. If you could move to the next slide. So here are some of the implications and considerations, and I'll talk about what we're doing next. And I want to invite up our panel, because we really want you to hear from people that are experiencing our economy today. So some of the things we've really arrived at with all of this process that Yami just mentioned, all of the people that have been involved, we're sort of halfway through Stanislaus 2030. And by the way, when we get to July and we present you with some plans, and we go to our elected officials with these plans, that's not the end of the road. That's really, literally, just the beginning of a 10-year stretch to get us to 2030. We were supposed to start this in 2020, by the way, but then COVID happened. But Stanislaus 2030, and when we get to 2030, all we're doing is handing the baton at that point to Nancy and Jose and Manny. We're being very intentional about the young people in our community, because we will take it one leg of the marathon, and then we're just handing that baton over at the next leg. This is a 50-year. This is a 50 to 100-year. This just needs to keep going. We need to continue to educate ourselves about our economy, jobs, small business, what it takes to achieve success in all of those areas. This is just one leg of the race. July is just a bet. And you might say, well, why July? Why are you trying to do this in 10 months? If we don't have a sense of urgency, we're never going to get anything done. So really, it's arbitrary, and the people that are working closely with us are like, are you serious? 10 months? Yes, we can get to somewhere in 10 months. We can get to a more concrete place in 10 months. What I don't want to do is keep meeting with no results. So that's part of this too. So the region must prioritize those traded sectors, recognize what can we build realistically. I hate to break it to any of you in the room that are harboring deep desire to become the next Silicon Valley. We're not going to become the next Silicon Valley. I'm just going to be honest with you. But how do we work again with our main industry, which is ag, and build adjacent industry clusters around that? And then again, how do we access jobs in those industries and build training pipelines? It's a very specific process. That how do we get our workforce trained? How do we get them aligned? There's a lot of moms that aren't working right now because of childcare. How do we support them, again, with those non-skill barriers? How do we support more small business? You're going to hear from 2 small business owners today. We have to develop a shared agenda. What we found, and this won't come as a shock to any of you, is the fragmentation between our workforce partners, MJC, Stan State, County Workforce Development, and industry is completely fragmented. And so what's the space where we can bring industry together to inform our higher education and training partners so that truly we're developing pipelines for today, not for 20 years ago? I mean, my daughter's still reading The Great Gatsby as a freshman. I mean, so, we got to think about education and how we need to change it up. A shared agenda with ongoing governance. How do we hold our leaders accountable to these measures? And I actually don't have an answer to that, but we need to maintain some sort of mutual accountability to make sure this gets done. And then again, what's not in this plan, because we wanted to get really focused on quality jobs, is housing is not in this plan. Healthcare is not in this plan, okay? So I appreciate those of you that are like, what about this, this, and this? This is a focused organizing effort to develop a shared language, understand our data, understand what might work around quality jobs and small business and the barriers that exist to both of those things, and then move us forward. There should be work happening that's like this right now in those other areas. And I know the county has a really awesome Housing Stanislaus plan that Jody Hayes, when he was here last month, talked about. So this is not that. And if you could go to the next slide. 2 testimonials. You're going to hear from Gabriella today, and then if you could go to the other one, we're going to hear from some small business owners on a panel. And the road ahead, if you could go to the next slide, is really getting going with all the data. And again, you're going to see a report come out in a few weeks that talks about this data at greater length. We're going to develop work groups that are really focused on some of the things I've mentioned. These work groups will have 10 weeks. We might give them 11 or 12, but a very specific time to move from those focus areas. One is small business and increasing small business opportunities, especially for our Latino community, our Black community, women. How do we support small business owners that you may think of as non-traditional? I always say the highest per capita number of small businesses and entrepreneurs is not Del Rio Country Club, it's Crow's Landing Road.
Yeah.
Highest per capita. And they've done it with not a lot of access to finance, to traditional forms of lending. And so how do we support that? And so we'll move into those working groups, and then we'll come forth with more concrete plans. Again, not as an end point, but then as a beginning point to focus in on those plans moving forward and seeking public and funding. You guys, trust me when I tell you there's state and federal funding for all of this. But what we don't have is, we don't have our catcher's mitt up in the air. We actually don't have projects in the pipeline. So we're missing out. I can promise you right now, Fresno is not missing out. Fresno has a lot of plans in place, and they're seeking all the funding that's available to them to take those plans forward. So again, this is an organizing function to get really clear on those plans and those priorities. So then we'll release that. Well, we're calling it an investment agenda because we're going to be seeking public and private investments in those plans. So that's it from me. You can learn more about us, next slide, on Instagram, Facebook, our website. Look to our website for the larger reports that you may not see released. The reports we release are more community sort of end user, but more data is going to be on our website. I would like now to bring up our panelists. So Yami, if you want to take a seat, because you're one of them. And I want to bring up Johnny Garcia with Got It All Insurance. And Gabriela Hernandez, Masavina Tortilla Company. Hi, Gabriela. There's a microphone there for you. What we wanted to do today is also bring in voices of people that are living through and in our economy. And so I'll start with Johnny Garcia, who's also the CEO of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. So Johnny, I want you to respond to this both as a small business owner, but really as the CEO of the Hispanic Chamber. What are barriers to small business growth that your members share with you? And did those barriers become more obvious during COVID, in your opinion?
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me up here. I'm honored and humbled before we get started, so thank you. Yes, so there's a lot of barriers that we've heard before COVID, and it can be anywhere from language barriers to access to capital, to just basic education. And I don't mean education like high school, college. I mean business education. Because as a business owner, it's different than going through school and working for an employee. It's a totally different animal. So there's barriers there of not knowing, like, so I'm a first generation business owner. I had to learn on my own. Well, not on my own by help of community, but I didn't have any guidance before. So there's that barrier of not knowing, for one, that it's a possibility, but for two, how do you go about it? So how do you, from A to B, get a business license? So those are barriers, just not being educated and understanding the different resources. So anyways, so those are some of the barriers, and just not having the right resources, a word in turn, who can you talk to? It's working out. I like talking without the microphone. So those are just a portion of the barriers. Just really knowing where to go and to turn to. And as a business owner, a lot of times you're working in your business and you're not working on it, so you don't have the time sometimes and don't really know where to turn to. You don't have time to go to different community events. And as COVID happened, that just really intensified that. It made it a lot because people were, for one, the pandemic's happening and worried and scared and not knowing if, can I open up, or am I gonna get sued? Do I have my employees are gonna get sick? So there's all this stuff that they've never had to go through on top of all the other barriers they already had. So COVID just really intensified a lot of those barriers and almost distanced the people a lot more than before, especially from the government. A lot of people, business owners, sometimes, our biggest challenge was trusting, government or even organizations like the chamber.
How did you resolve that challenge? Because I know ultimately there was some CARES Act funding that finally got through to smaller businesses that may not easily have accessed those funds before. Was there a lot of outreach? How did that work in your mind, and was it successful?
Yeah, so when, I think that's one of the best things the county did when the CARES Act money came around. They approached our chamber and a few other organizations here locally, because we already had a footprint in the community. So there was a lot of trust there already. But even with that, there was a lot of distrust. Like, is this true? Is this really happening? We had family members telling the business owners, don't do it, they're gonna take your money, or it's not legit, don't do it, or their pride, like, oh, I don't need any help. So just them doing that really helped out. We were able to help the community out because we had, a trust in the community, at least in certain sectors, so that helped out a lot.
Thank you, Johnny. So as I'm listening to Johnny, just thinking through some of what he's talking about, timing of programs and services for small businesses and entrepreneurs. Sometimes you can't offer that in the middle of the day or in the morning. Access to those programs, navigation, permitting, licensing. Every city should be looking at their permitting and licensing and trying to figure out how easy is it to start a small business. Start with that question, every city. Thinking about mentoring and business guidance. Who are those mentors that you could tap into? How do we provide those mentors to our small business owners, especially in our Latino community? And then access to lending. What are the capital lending opportunities out there for small business? So someone else that I really want to get her voice into this is Gabriela Hernandez, who's actually done everything we talk about. She started a small business called Masadena Tortilla. Gabriela, if you could describe your experience founding a small business in Stanislaus County, what was that like? And what type of support did you access, if any, both financial and human? So let me just repeat that for those of you that didn't hear. Gabriela, describe your business, describe your experience starting a small business, and what type of support, if any, did you need to do that?
Well, when I began my dream of starting my own business, I felt stuck because I didn't know there were so many licenses, permits, laws that I needed to get in order to start my business. And also, most of that information is in English. I moved here to the United States 3.5 years, so I'm still learning the language. So there were so many concepts that I didn't understand. But I found an organization, SBDC Valley Sierra, and they have helped me a lot through this process. Sometimes I get discouraged, but I have my coach who is here, Manny. He has helped me a lot to this, in this process.
So have you received support from Manny and others in navigating sort of the permitting licensing process?
Yes.
Okay.
In case that he doesn't have the answer, he will connect me with someone else.
Nice. What drove you to want to start your own business?
Why?
Yeah.
Well, because I want to help my community. I want to benefit my community. And I also want to keep alive a family tradition. I sell handmade tortillas. My abuelita, she taught me how to make tortillas. She passed away last year from COVID. So the borders were closed, so I couldn't go to the funeral. My 2-year-old son, he didn't have the opportunity to meet her. So I want to keep her legacy of making tortillas by hand, but also help my son to get to know her by doing something that she taught me to do. and also helping my community. I want to help my community. I want to help them to take control of their health by eating healthy and provide a healthy tortilla alternative.
Where can we buy your tortillas?
I have my stand over there.
You have some people. Oh, look at that! That's awesome. And that's great. So everybody buy those tortillas. But also, can you tell us, Gabriela, where we could find them? And like, how have you found places to sell them, or is it at the farmers market, or where do you sell them traditionally?
Everyone can place an order through my website, but that's another challenge because in order to sell in farmers markets, you need to have a license or a permit, and you need to have a commercial kitchen. I live in Patterson. In Patterson, we have 0 commercial kitchens, and it's kind of pricey to rent a commercial kitchen. So that's another challenge.
So those are the types of challenges we're seeking to uncover next. Because we have people that have dreams and ambition and goals, and they're working hard. How do we create more? You know, there may not be a lot of commercial kitchens. There's a lot of churches with kitchens that sit empty all week, and I know a lot of you are church folks. How do we, and I know we're jumping to solutions, and Amanda's probably like, don't do that. But we literally could have 50 kitchens available in Modesto and another 20 in Patterson overnight. What a great way for churches to open up their facilities, which I know a lot of churches, and bring community into your spaces. Thank you, Gabriela. Yami, we know that economic development, and as I mentioned before, is traditionally under sort of someone who has economic development in their title. That's great. What we're trying to do is challenge that and really have all of us become educated on our economy, what it takes to be a thriving economy. So we want to open that conversation up. That's what today is about too. What do you think civic leaders and stakeholders, how can they advance the goals? People that maybe aren't running small business or aren't Jalen, who has economic development in his title, aren't the mayor or city council, you know, people that may not traditionally focus on it, the rest of us. How can we support our economy, and why does that matter, in your opinion?
Marian, it matters greatly. If we have a thriving economy, we truly will see that in our jobs and where we work, where we play, where we praise. I feel it's really extremely important that people know. I'm in healthcare, but one of the reasons why I got involved is because 30% of the overall health outcomes have to do with social economic factors. And a lot of people don't realize those things. You know, if you have a job, if you have access to insurance, if you have access to transportation, all that affects our overall health. So all the different industries like education, if there's good schools, we're producing the workforce, we're bringing in new trades, or you know, if we all are working together towards a common goal, we can actually see our economy thrive. And every single sector is so critical that our economy thrives, and you'll be able to align it to this effort, actually. So it's really having those discussions, and that's the reason why, you know, Debrief is so important as far as like those community forums and discussions, because at the end of the day, we'll be able to understand how do we, each and every one of us, have a huge impact on these efforts.
Well said. I remember Father Boyle, who came and spoke in series years ago, who runs Homeboy Industries down in LA. His favorite saying is, nothing stops a bullet like a job. And it's really, how do we provide training and jobs that are, again, good jobs for our youth, or pipelines, you know. So please know that when we say we need more good jobs, jobs that pay that wage threshold, jobs that have offer benefits, we're not saying every job is going to be one of those jobs. We're saying that's largely what's missing in our economy right now. We do need the entry-level jobs. We do need those first jobs. I had those first jobs. My kids are going to have those first jobs. But we have a lot of adults that now just stay in those initial jobs and know sort of that pathway to prosperity that you saw. How do we have more inclusion and more prosperity? We need a healthier mix of jobs. Okay, Okay, so we're not saying the low-wage jobs are gonna go away. Those are necessary to a vital economy. We just don't want the vast legion of folks just staying in those jobs. We need a healthy mix of all types of jobs in our community. Johnny, as you think about your members of the Hispanic Chamber and you think about entrepreneurs that you meet like Gabriela, can you tell me one or two things? What can be done to support those businesses moving forward that you think, gosh, this would be a low-hanging fruit if we could help members or your small business and entrepreneurs, it would be one or two of these things?
There's a lot more than just one or two things, but I think just obviously supporting our businesses, supporting local as much as possible. Like you said, we do need businesses here that are selling, internationally and globally, so that way we bring that new money in here and helps our economy out. But really trying to keep things local and just educating. If you know a small business, connecting them. Like we as a chamber, we're a resource. We have a lot of different connections, like with the SBDC, CMN, a lot of different ones here in town. So the way to support them is to get them connected with certain organizations that can help them, because not everybody knows everything, but organizations like ours do have connections throughout the community that can find the answer for them. So that's another big thing, and just getting involved. We need, not just business owners, but we need the nonprofits. We need the community to be involved. Like we're having on March 24th, we're having a business funding expo for small businesses, so that way they know some different types of funding that are available to them that most people don't know. So it's just getting involved. How can you help out with different types of trainings? That makes a big difference, and being flexible, because from 7 to 6 sometimes a business owner can't get out of their office at that time. So
that's a really good point. Yeah, and when we think about, our economy, it's a system, right, of interlocking and sometimes not interlocking parts. But right now we know there's holes in that system. We do need more capital. We do need incubators, accelerators. We do need the finance and the lending. We do need business mentors. We do need more bricks and mortar and supporting local business. There's just some holes. That doesn't mean one person or one agency is resolving those. It's getting clear on what's missing and what can be scaled, and how do we, each of us, what role do we play in that? So absolutely.
And working together.
Absolutely.
That's the biggest thing, because if you have two different groups doing kind of the same thing, why do the same thing twice? Come together and let's work together. Let's pull each other's strengths. I have a strength that another organization may not have, and that's the biggest thing. That's one thing I've been working on these last few years as the chamber, is bringing the different groups together.
And I feel like, don't you think that COVID kind of exposed and then accelerated that? Because we had to rely on each other. I know SBDC came to Hispanic Chamber and really, like said, we need, and the county, as you mentioned, so sort of new partnerships were formed, don't you think, in crisis?
Yeah, and it did. COVID, in a way, it's sad, but it was a blessing also too, because before, just in the Latino community, a lot of Latino groups were separate.
Right.
They weren't doing stuff together. They were having their different, committees meeting and doing different things, doing the same thing at different times. And that was my goal, was to start connecting with the different Latino groups, not just the Latino groups, but that was the main source before COVID. And when COVID happened, that really did accelerate it and kind of forced us to come together to try to get the information, one type of information, and get it out to all of our communities, because people are getting information from all over the place.
Absolutely. Yeah, in crisis, yes, everything we've seen in the last few years has been absolutely devastating and heartbreaking, and this really now pivoting to take advantage of the opportunities that happen, the new partnerships, and kind of scaling those, bringing them forward. So thank you, Johnny. Gabriela, we'll end with you. You mentioned your son and your grandmother. What are some challenges you face as a mom and a business owner? How, because you have a young child, and you're starting this business. When we talk about certainly lending and helping with permitting and licensing, but just what, if you could talk about some of those challenges and what supports may be needed to have you meet your goals.
Well, my son, he's 2 years old and he has a lot of energy. One of the challenges is networking, because as a full-time mom, my networking was limited to maybe another couple of full-time moms. So that's kind of hard. And also, I know there are some events like this one, but sometimes when you have a 2-year-old son, you need to get a babysitter in order to get to that event. So that's another challenge. So sometimes we want to do a lot of things, but it's not that simple when you have kids to take care of.
And that's why we're also addressing in Stan 2030, not just sort of trying to provide those training programs, trying to support small business development, trying to think about industry clusters. So again, very different things. We're trying to develop some plans around all of that. It's also the barriers to all of those things that we may create the most beautiful programs and services in the world, and we've got all the shiny bells and whistles, but if people don't have childcare, may not have access to transportation, they literally can't get to these program services. So thank you for highlighting that. What is your goal for your business moving forward?
My goal is to, because it's not affordable to everyone to buy handmade, healthy, delicious tortillas. It's a commercial. But it's not for everyone. But my plan is to get tortilla maker. So in order to make them affordable to everyone, because most like the families with low income should be getting these healthy products, but they can't afford it.
Right. So you're trying to make it more affordable by automating a part of the process.
Yes. Yeah.
I love it. So you've just gained, what, 75 new people in your network, Gabriella? Okay, so just, a round of applause for our panel. I'm going to turn it back over to Nancy, because we'd like now to pose a question to you at your tables. Nancy, thank you again. You're welcome to go back. Thank you.
Thank you, Yamilet and Marianne, for presenting, and thank you to our panelists for sharing their invaluable experience with us today. Please join me in another round of applause for them.